The cabin glowed faintly as the plane hummed through thick clouds at 35,000 feet. To everyone else, she was nothing more than another traveler, quiet, head lowered slightly, hands resting neatly in her lap, carrying the patient composure of someone long accustomed to waiting. Then the intercom broke the stillness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you glance out the windows to your left, two fighter jets appeared, sliding into perfect formation, their wingtips catching the afternoon sun. They weren't there to confront. They were there to accompany, to honor. If you believe every journey carries a hidden tribute, type homebound below. The flight itself was ordinary, barely half full. Just a short commuter run along the coast, the kind of route that linked smaller cities ignored by the big airlines. Nothing luxurious, mostly workers, students heading home for break, and a handful of business travelers chasing their connections. She boarded like anyone else, stepping quietly down the jet bridge without ceremony. No cameras. No announcements from the gate agents who processed passenger after passenger. Her ticket read 14D, a middle seat by the wing, a type frequent flyers dreaded but that she accepted without a word. Her bag was simple, worn leather, its scuffs telling of years of travel, not fashion. She slid it under the seat with care, then pulled out the safety card, one she'd seen countless times before but studied again with steady focus, as if reminding herself that even the smallest procedures mattered. To the suited professionals buried in spreadsheets, she barely existed. Just another body filling a seat. To the college kids buzzing about spring break, she was only a quiet older woman, wrapped in the sort of silence their grandparents wore like a second skin. Around her, the crew carried out their routines, smiles practiced, demonstrations efficient, everything as expected. No one on board seemed to recognize her, or had any reason to wonder why she'd chosen this flight on this day. To them, she was simply passenger 14D, just another entry on the manifest, destined to fade from memory once the plane touched down. She leaned toward the small oval window, watching the coastline unspool far below. The ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its deep blue a sight she had witnessed countless times from countless angles. But this flight was unlike any that came before. She wasn't traveling for duty, for briefings, for missions that blurred across borders. After 32 years of service that had carried her across continents and oceans, she was finally on her way home. Beneath her seat, the weathered leather bag she carried held more than the usual travel items. Wrapped with care inside were medals and commendations, symbols of a career spent in places never marked on official maps, carrying out work that would never appear in public records. They weren't meant for display or ceremony. They were going home too, back to the quiet house she had left behind decades earlier. About 40 minutes into the flight, once the aircraft had leveled and the cabin settled into its rhythms, passengers reading, scrolling through screens, murmuring in low voices, the intercom cut through the steady thrum of engines and air systems. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. If you'll look out the windows on the left, you're about to witness something truly special. Curiosity rippled through the rows. People shifted, stretched, pressed their faces to the glass. Some had been dozing, others distracted by glowing screens, but the tone in the captain's voice suggested this was no routine update. From the horizon, two dark figures emerged, climbing skyward as if loosed from some unseen bow. With each passing moment they grew clearer, their sharp silhouettes resolving into a sight that left no doubt. Sleek and sharp, the military fighters banked gracefully before settling into perfect alignment with the airliner, their movements precise and deliberate. A ripple of gasps swept through the cabin as passengers pressed closer to the windows, phones and cameras rising instinctively to capture the sight. The fighters held steady, their wings unshaken even as turbulence nudged the larger plane. Then, with a subtle dip of his wing, the lead pilot offered a gesture, part salute, part acknowledgement. This was no coincidence, no training drill intersecting a civilian route. Their presence was intentional, arranged for this flight and for one passenger alone. A flight attendant approached row 14, her steps measured, her expression calm but purposeful. Leaning close, she spoke softly, her words meant only for the woman in the middle seat. "Ma'am, the captain asked me to let you know, they're here for you." The passenger gave a single nod, small and composed, carrying the weight of someone long familiar with protocol and with the unspoken language of military honor. No explanation was needed. The fighters would remain until landing, a silent guard in the sky, their formation saying more than any speech or ceremony ever could. Outside the oval windows, the escort held flawless precision, transforming what began as an ordinary commuter flight into something profoundly symbolic. The rest of the passengers might not know exactly why it was happening, but instinct told them they were witnessing something meaningful, something deserving of reverence. If you believe honor can arrive in the most unexpected places, type homebound and share this moment with someone who's earned it. Low whispers stirred through the cabin like wind brushing across tall grass. Strangers exchanged glances, curiosity sparking the same unspoken question. Who is she? Across the aisle, a young boy tugged at his father's sleeve, eyes wide as he pointed toward the fighter jets flying in lockstep with their airliner. Dad, why are those planes following us? The father studied the Escort for a moment, his expression shifting with recognition, then bent toward his son. They are military, he said quietly. Someone important is on this flight. The boy's gaze swept the rows, searching every face, trying to spot the important passenger, looking for the kind of person who looked like they belonged to such an honor. Some imagined the honored passenger might be in uniform or marked by visible signs of rank or authority. A flight attendant, recognizing the growing questions and the need for quiet clarity, leaned toward a few passengers with a calm professionalism reserved for extraordinary situations. Her words carried both respect and restraint. She served our country for many years, she explained softly. This escort is a tradition, a way to honor service that was given without recognition. She's going home. The explanation moved through the cabin naturally, passed from row to row in hushed voices that carried reverence, not idle curiosity. People began to realize they were sharing a flight with someone whose life story they might never learn, but whose sacrifice had clearly earned this moment of tribute. The old leather bag under her seat no longer looked ordinary. It seemed weighted with meaning, containing symbols of a career that had demanded silence, secrecy, and unshakable resolve. They couldn't know the details, the classified missions carried out in places erased from maps, the decisions made in moments where the price of failure was counted in lives, not promotions. They couldn't know the years spent in danger, keeping others safe while her name remained unknown to those she protected. But they could see the truth in the Escort outside their windows. The fighters held formation with unyielding precision, their presence speaking not of orders but of respect freely given. It was a salute that surpassed rank and regulations, a gesture reserved for those who had served with quiet distinction. As the airliner began its descent through scattered clouds, the engine's shifting pitch, the fighters remained alongside, constant, steady, unshaken. At 10,000 feet, they offered their final tribute, a synchronized wing rock, a gesture visible to anyone who looked outside. Then, with perfect symmetry, they broke away, one banking left toward the sinking sun, the other right toward the far-off mountains, contrails stretching behind them like signatures fading across the sky. Inside the cabin, passengers pressed close to their windows, watching until the fighters were gone. Some clapped softly. Others sat in silence, choosing reverence over applause. In that stillness, the ordinary had become extraordinary. The flight was no longer just a routine hop from one airport to another. It had become a ceremony in motion, a quiet witness to honor in the skies. When the wheels finally touched down, rubber shrieking against concrete, the usual rush to stand and grab bags never came. The cabin lingered in stillness, passengers absorbing the weight of what they had just seen. The passengers stayed in their seats, sensing instinctively that protocol required her to move first. That respect demanded patience. She rose quietly, lifting her weathered leather bag with the same calm efficiency that had marked her throughout the flight. There was no intercom announcement, no ceremony, only the unspoken power of silence. Faces turned as she made her way down the aisle, passengers watching her with expressions more fitting for a solemn occasion than a routine landing. Outside, ground crews paused their work to watch the plane taxi in. Word had already spread, through radio chatter, between pilots, through conversations that passed quickly in professional circles. The story would continue to ripple outward, the passenger who wasn't just another passenger, the woman whose quiet service had earned her a fighter escort home. A reminder that heroism often traveled unnoticed, dressed in civilian clothes, expecting no fanfare. Through the terminal, she walked steadily, unhurried, carrying not only the contents of her old bag but also the deep satisfaction of service completed. The airport buzzed with its usual evening rhythm, announcements over loudspeakers, families hurrying toward gates, travelers juggling phones and luggage, but her presence carried a gravity all its own. At a newsstand, she bought a bottle of water. The clerk, a young veteran himself, recognized the subtle bearing of someone who had worn a uniform, but said nothing more than a polite, "Have a good evening." Sometimes recognition was best given in silence, in a respectful nod. Near baggage claim, a retired Air Force colonel spotted her. He recognized the stance, the awareness in her eyes, the quiet confidence that never faded from those who had commanded in difficult places. He approached with deliberate respect. "Ma'am, if I may, that was quite an honor up there today." She turned, her face softening at the recognition. "They didn't have to," she said simply. "But I'm grateful they did." 32 years, he asked, seeing the story written in her bearing. 32, she confirmed. Most of it where no one was watching. He nodded, understanding without the need for details. The shadowed missions, the decisions made in silence, the sacrifices that would never make headlines. "Welcome home," he said, offering his hand. Their handshake was firm, brief, carrying the respect of two professionals bound by service to something greater than themselves. No stories, no explanations, just recognition. Outside, a simple sedan waited. Her sister sat behind the wheel, the keeper of the family home through decades of deployments. The reunion was quiet but full, an embrace of relief, gratitude, and the fulfillment of promises long deferred. As they drove through familiar neighborhoods, she reflected on the Escort. It hadn't been planned, requested, or scheduled. It had simply happened. Pilots hearing of her retirement and deciding that some service deserved recognition, even if only in the skies, without medals or ceremonies. The house looked just as she remembered, lovingly preserved through her long absence. Inside, a small American flag rested on a mantel beside photographs from her career. Soon, the medals in her leather bag would join them, not as trophies, but as reminders of work worth doing well. That evening, on the back porch beneath a sky filling with stars, she thought again of the fighters that had guided her home. By then, their pilots were likely filing routine reports, logging the Escort as just another mission. But what they had given her was no ordinary gesture. It was a gift that transcended protocol, a recognition that spoke louder than ceremony. Everyone on that flight would remember the sight of the Escort, the subtle wing salute, the peeling contrails against the sky. A reminder that honor can appear when least expected, that service is never truly invisible, and that some gestures echo far beyond the moment. She was home now, her duty complete, her service fulfilled, not with announcements or applause, but with the enduring respect of those who understood what such sacrifice truly meant.